we got to talk about the Edmonton Oilers.
Of course we do.
I need to absolutely tee off on this team right now.
Okay, I'm just gonna leave for a bit. You let me know when you're done.
Okay.
I'll be back in an hour.
You can come back in like 25 minutes.
Oh, that's it? 25 minutes? I'm surprised.
This team, Lepore, is such a disaster. I just shake my head every time this happens to this team, because Oilers fans at the beginning of the season were on cloud nine. They got off to a 9-1 start, 16-5 over their first 21 games of the season.
50% power play.
50% power play. I think they were the best offensive team in the league in terms of goals per game. Now Colorado's actually number one. Like, that team has just been lighting everyone up. But the Oilers were just an absolute buzzsaw offensively. But man, oh man, over their last 13 games, 2-9-2. Like I said, you have Dave Tippett calling out Mikko Koskinen. You have now McDavid in COVID protocol. Now, McDavid should be back very soon here. But this team now can't score on the power play because they now do not have the number one power play in the league. Guess who has the number one power play in the NHL right now?
Tell us, Bruno.
It is the Toronto Maple Leafs. They officially passed the Edmonton Oilers this week in terms of power play percentage. But Lepore, this Oilers team, okay, I can't get over how poorly built this roster is. It's the same shit we saw last season. It's two players playing out of their minds, Draisaitl and McDavid, and the rest of the roster is just not cutting it. It's just not. And I don't give a shit what we saw early in the season with this team and how great they were offensively. And you can tell me that, Jesse Puljujarvi's had a nice season. Same with Nugent Hopkins, and even Zach Hyman for that matter, who only has 20 points in 31 games after Oilers fans thought he was going to score 40 goals and be a point per game player with Connor McDavid. It turns out that Zach Hyman is Zach Hyman. But
who we really love and think is a very good player.
Yeah, we love Zach Hyman. But he is what he is, right?
We're just bitter Oilers fans.
I just can't believe this team is in this position right now. Looking at the standings, Lepore,
they're out of the playoffs. They're out of the playoffs, aren't they?
Right now, let me go look at the wild card real quick in the Western Conference. Right now, yes, the Oilers technically are out of a playoff spot. They do have some games in hand, though. But yes, you are right. They are technically out of a playoff spot, which is a disaster in itself. But just looking at the division standings, do we remember how terrible the Vancouver Canucks were just a couple of weeks ago? Or I can't even remember now when they officially hired Bruce Boudreau to be their new head coach, because it feels like it happened like 3 years ago. But if you look at the standings right now, Lepore, Edmonton and Vancouver have both played 34 games. The Oilers are only 3 points ahead of the Canucks.
Wow.
As good as the Oilers were at the beginning of the season, and as terrible as the Canucks were, and all the shit that organization was going through, for these teams to almost be in the exact same spot right now is nothing short of a colossal disaster and embarrassment for this Oilers team. Lepore, if this Oilers team with the two best players in the world, now listen, McDavid's number one, Draisaitl, I don't think he's number two, but he's somewhere in that top five to six players in the world, right? You have two of these guys at the peak of their powers right now, in their prime. If this team doesn't make the playoffs this season, I cannot think of a bigger embarrassment. And this is coming from two Leaf fans, a team that continues to embarrass itself year after year, continues to find new ways to lose in the playoffs, to lose to Zamboni drivers, to lose in the most fucked up ways possible. If this Oilers team fails to make the playoffs this season, I cannot think of a bigger embarrassment in the National Hockey League.
Yeah. If you do look at it, it does look, and I hate to pile on the shit. Of course, I hate to pile on the shit, but it does look pretty grim because, as you mentioned, they're 1 point out of the last wild card spot behind the Kings. They do have a game in hand on the Kings, but in the West, unlike the East, there's a lot of teams in that mix. I mean, the Wild have the top spot, Kings have the second spot, and then you have San Jose, Edmonton, the Jets, the Stars, the Canucks. The Canucks are all the way down, but the Canucks have 35 points, and they've been playing well, so you'd expect them more to go on a little run or continue to go on their run. Yeah, they're totally in it. So I don't know. Like right now, would you bet on the Oilers making the playoffs or not?
Man, I would still bet on this team to make the playoffs because I think it'll get to a point where Connor McDavid, as pissed off as he probably is at this organization and for management to fail to put a competent team around him, it almost feels like he's going to do whatever it takes to get this team into the playoffs. But honestly, man, it almost feels like a coin flip at this point based
Yeah,
on the way this team has been trending.
Yeah, McDavid will just decide to put the Oilers in the playoffs. But I think the Oilers, and I don't have a solution here. And again, Oilers fans, comment down below. I'm sure you already have based on Bruno's rant. But I think the Oilers are similar to the Sens in the way that, and this is so broad, and I myself don't always appreciate when people say this, they need to make a move. Something that they have to make a move. They have to shake it up. And I know that's a bad sign. And when you say something like that, things aren't going well, but there just needs to be a change. And if you look at this team, you know what it kind of reminds me of, Bruno? You look at the work Ken Holland has done. Now, here's Ken Holland, GM of the Edmonton Oilers, working with the cap all those years in championships he won in Detroit. He had the best ownership in the league and a huge payroll and could do whatever the hell he wanted. Here you have him as the general manager of a cap team. And you look at the moves that he made, the players he acquired. That's a lot of patchwork, man. That's a lot of patchwork. The CC deal. I mean, the Barry one, we think the Barry one's worked out for Edmonton, to be honest. The CC deal, the Keith deal, even the Hyman deal. Like, we love Zach Hyman. I hope Zach Hyman lights it up every night, but that deal is going to age poorly. So these moves seem desperate. You have a team where we gone D. Okay, we need CC and Keith. That didn't solve the problem. That just made the situation worse. And then you have the situation with Hyman where it's like a short-term fix to try to get him to play with some good players. And as a Leaf fan, it reminds me of what we were doing when we were signing guys like Komisarek, or like Pavel Kabina, Hal Gill, just trying to fix that D.
Just brutal patchwork signings.
Yeah, and it's about patience, I guess. And maybe these GMs look at it, and I've often said they look at it this way, where they know they're not going to be there for that long, so they don't really care. But not very smart. I'll say it. Even the biggest Homer Oilers fan cannot look at me. And again, I root for the Oilers. I love Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl and co. We root for Zach Hyman, even Mike Smith. I like Mike Smith, like the whole story of his age and all that.
It's hard to root against a guy like Mike Smith. He's been a very good goalie in this league for a long time. And I know he's 39 now and not playing that well this season, but that's a guy that it's just easy to root for him.
100%. So when you look at this team, it's a team you want to root for. I mean, Edmonton's one of those markets, but you look at the acquisitions they've made. Even the biggest Homer Oilers fan in the world cannot look at this in a positive way. And to be honest, a lot of the time, and I'll separate the deals even within the Oilers, say like the Hyman deal, even though we don't think it's going to age well, we get it. That move, I'll somewhat let the GM off the hook and say, you know what? And again, it hasn't aged poorly yet. I mean, there's a very good chance it will. But we look at that deal and we can see it. The GM saw a player who played with talented players in Toronto. I have two super elite players. He'll blend in well, and he brings an X factor. Even if I got to give him too much term, let's do it. Let's get this guy in here. We have two incredible players. We're in win now mode. That one I get. The CC deal and the Keith deal, I have no idea.
Yeah, they traded away assets to acquire Duncan Keith's entire remaining contract.
And again, I love Duncan Keith. I love Duncan Keith. It's just, I don't get it. And even with Keith, it's a weird one because and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the only reason why Chicago traded him was because he requested a trade because of the whole COVID thing, he wasn't seeing his kids?
I think that was a factor from what I remember. It had just gotten to a point where that dude needed a change. And then remember Ken Holland made a point, I believe it was in a press conference where he talked about, Keith's leadership. And I think he mentioned like his experience, like winning gold medals with Canada and how it's like, who the fuck cares that he won gold medals with Canada in 2014?
Yeah.
And was he on the 2010 team? I'm assuming he was.
Yeah, he was.
He was on both of those teams. Like, who cares? Who cares? Even the Stanley Cup said he's won, When was the last time the
6
Blackhawks
years.
won the cup? 2015, I believe it was.
It's going 7 years ago.
Like, the dude is done. He's washed. And I know, like, he's not an awful defenseman. It's not like he's out there and he's given up, scoring chances left, right, and center. But to acquire his entire cap hit was just insane. Like, the Oilers in the offseason, Lepore, committed $65 million to, this is not even including Duncan Keith, Zach Hyman, Tyson Barrie, and Cody Ceci. $65 million to those three players. And like we said, the Hyman contract is clearly not going to age well. The guy's 29 years old. He's injury prone. He's playing at his regular Zach Hyman pace right now. He's a 50-point player at best. That's really what Zach Hyman is. Whether he's playing with Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Wayne Gretzky in his prime, like, Zach Hyman is what he is. So I don't understand what Oilers fans thought they were going to get from him, as much as we love the guy. And then you look, Lepore, at their situation heading into next season. Their only significant unrestricted free agent money coming off the books is Mikko Koskinen at $4.5 million. So when you talk about trying to make this team better and moves that this team can make to put themselves in a better position next season, they don't have a ton of flexibility here. Now, Oilers fans told me this past offseason, $27 million in cap space. I don't know the exact number, but like I said, they blew that all on Zach Hyman and bringing in Duncan Keith and Cody Ceci and Tyson Barrie. And now heading into next season, this team looks even worse, something we both talked about going back to the offseason when we were flabbergasted at some of the moves this team was making. And now heading into this offseason, Lepore, they only have $4.5 million of flexibility coming off the books with that Koskinen deal. What the hell is this team going to do? Unless they make a trade, and I don't know who they trade. There's no chance I'm trading McDavid or Draisaitl. As much as Oilers fans have probably thought up a million different trade scenarios involving maybe they haven't thought about trading McDavid, but maybe it's come into their minds like, oh, we might have to trade Draisaitl to make some crazy splash. I think that would be a disaster because I think Draisaitl, funny enough, as much as we rip Peter Chiarelli for the shit he did in Edmonton, that contract that he signed Draisaitl to might be the best contract in the NHL.
Incredible.
Like, it's insane how good that contract looks. But this team has no flexibility heading into the offseason. What are they going to do? Trade Ryan Nugent-Hopkins? Like, what are you going to get for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Lepore? This team, like you said, is in win now mode. That's why Ken Holland made these, let's call them panic type deals, these sense of urgency deals where he had to bring in these players because he goes, holy shit, I have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in their prime. They're both lighting up the league like, Jaromir Jagr and Mario Lemieux or Wayne Gretzky and whoever and Mark Messier. And I gotta do something to surround these guys with talent. The problem is this team just still isn't good enough.
Yeah. And with the Koskinen deal coming off the books too, if I remember correctly, they have Smith for one more year to give him that deal. So you have to get another goalie.
Yeah. Smith has another year at $2.2 million.
Yeah. So, Koskinen comes off the books, but you got to get a goalie because you can't rely on Smith to play like 50, 60 games. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. The Oilers are tough. They're tough because usually there are things you can point to, like this is what they got to do, or, they got to move this guy, this bad contract, or you can look to the future and say, okay, when this comes off the books, they can do something. But the team is what it is right now. It is what it is.
I don't want to hear a peep from an Oilers fan talking about COVID and injuries. Every fucking team in the National Hockey League has dealt with the exact same thing this season. So if you're going to come in this comment section and start ripping us for saying the Oilers dealt with all these injuries and COVID, wake up.
Yeah, we were just talking about the
Sens in the league has gone through the same bullshit this season. There is no excuse for this team to be where it is right now. I'm sorry. I'm really fired up about this because this team should be so much better than it is. And I sound like a broken record. You have the best player in the fucking world on your team. You have Leon Draisaitl, who just won a Hart Trophy 2 seasons ago, and you're still in this position. You're a borderline playoff team. This team should be ashamed of itself. This team should be a perennial top 5 team in the National Hockey League, Lepore. It it's embarrassing. It really is that this team is not better than it is right now. And it looks like they're stuck in quicksand at the moment. There's nothing they can do to get better this offseason unless they make some wild trade, which I don't even think will make this team better. They have no cap flexibility. I honestly, I just feel bad. I feel bad for Oilers fans. I really do. As much as they think I hate their team and I hate their fan base, it couldn't be further from the truth. I want to see this team succeed. I want to see McDavid and Draisaitl in the playoffs, playing well, going to a conference final, going to a Stanley Cup final. But man, oh man, it's bleak right now, man. It really is.
Yeah, you made the point about the whole COVID and injuries thing. To be honest, it's barely touched the Oilers at all. They've played 34 games. Draisaitl's played all 34, McDavid 33, the Nuge 30, PRV 32, Hyman 31. Bouchard's played 34, Tyson Berry's played 33, Darnell Nurse has played 27. I mean, they've played games. Like their best players have been in the games for the most part. So we were just talking about the Ottawa Senators having like 7-8 guys out of the lineup, having no chance against even an average NHL opponent. The Oilers haven't dealt with that. So that Ken Holland can't go in that boardroom and talk with his name, Katz. How do you say it? He can't look him in the face and tell him that, oh, COVID fucked us because it didn't, or injuries fucked us because it didn't. It was, like I said, patchwork and failure to plan ahead, as far as I'm concerned.
I think that puts a bow on this conversation, Lepore.
Yeah,
I can go on. Like I said, I can literally go on for the next 3 hours talking about the Edmonton Oilers, but I think we should move on to the next topic. All right, buddy. Oilers fans, I hope things get better. And we will talk. We will come back to this. I guarantee it, because you know I love talking about the Oilers, and Lepore loves listening to me talk about the Edmonton Oilers. But we will get to them down the road.